And we're back again Monday afternoon. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court and more all today on Carolyn Will Save the Planet right after this. And we are back. Hi, Carol. How you doing?
Awesome. How are you?
Fine, except I don't like the rain. I know it's good for your plants.
It's awesome for my plants, and it's fun just to have like a rainy day.
I guess.
You know,
if I can stay inside, maybe.
Okay.
You know, that might make it all okay.
Kind of a little Carpenter song. Rainy days and Mondays always get me down.
I don't know.
Oh my God.
Before my time.
We're only a decade apart.
That's true. That's very, very true. But yeah, so but it means it's almost mud season here in Southwest Missouri, which I'm never much of a fan of.
Well, it is mud season at the Carol Hutchison household with the pet door and 3 dogs.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
it's like woo.
Yeah, it's worse. We have a live studio audience today. Rodney's back in the house.
Hey, Rodney.
Rodney, yeah, thanks for being there. Yeah, glad you're here. So
we love Rodney. I think
we will take some other fans if they want to.
Yeah, sure. We've got two other chairs here and out there, and yeah, we'll take more in the live studio audience. So if you have anything, just shout it right out. We'll just hear what you have to say.
Ignore it or talk about it. One of the two.
We'll either ignore it or talk about it.
What we always got to do. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and I tell quite a few people, about the show.
Mm-hmm.
A few people every week. I kind of, just ask them to, just watch it or something. Mainly, I do things like, hey, when you're washing the dishes, or like basically not paying attention, and you just kind of want to have it on. Like, it's great. Just do that. Like
good background noise.
Yeah. Sure. It doesn't have to be like a TV show. Like you're going to watch us. In fact, I would prefer that you don't just listen. So great. I talked to a friend of mine. He's like, hey, so I listened to one of your shows. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. You guys seem to enjoy it.
Perfect. Nobody else does, but as long as you're having fun.
It was intellectual. It was stimulating.
No,
I really enjoyed the back and forth.
Uh-huh.
It's like, well, you two were having fun.
Yeah.
So
well, that's kind of my threshold here for doing shows on Planet 417. If we want to do a show, we're going to do a show. It doesn't really matter if anybody watches, because we're just doing it to entertain ourselves. And
the viewership is really not the goal.
Victory.
That is true.
Goal.
So you mentioned having some Facebook chatter this afternoon.
Yeah, I went ahead
what's going on?
and kept it up here for you. So it's just kind of interesting. I've had several of these going forth, and I really don't usually jump in to argue on Facebook or social media at all. And I really won't do it about politics at all.
Right.
Where I will is when somebody makes a blatantly wrong legal statement. I mean, if you blatantly misstate the law, then I will correct you.
Kind of jump in.
It's kind of a public service. And
and not that you come across as a know-it-all or egotistical or anything like that.
Of course not. I'm merely speaking from a position of actual authority.
Yes. And yes, you are a judge.
I am a judge.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tell you about this one, but my favorite one that I got into was the one, and this is actually kind of a pet peeve.
Okay.
So it's a driving one, which I even know more about traffic laws because of what I did for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So, when you're merging onto, say, I-44.
Sure.
And you're merging on.
Right.
The polite thing for people to do is to, if they are oncoming traffic, just maybe slow down, maybe speed up, maybe change lanes to allow that person merging some space to get on.
Because you know where they're going.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a mystery.
Right. But you're not required to do so.
Correct.
It is so Missouri law states always in any situation, not who has the right of way, but who must yield right of way. That's the way
Correct.
that laws are always stated.
Right.
And the person who is merging into traffic, i.e. changing lanes, is the one that has to yield right of way.
Because the other person that's already in the lane has what we call control of the lane.
Correct.
Okay.
And so this person was angry because someone had not allowed them space to get in, and was ranting on Facebook, as people are wont to do, about this person, wouldn't let me in, didn't give me room, and that's against the law. And I'm like, you were okay until you said that. And I have to say, actually, no.
Right.
That is wrong. That
Correct.
is not the legal standard. They're not required to give you space. Now, what do I get back? Oh, yes, they do. That is the law.
Oh my God. And see, so that's what makes me crazy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, continue, please.
Well, I mean, that's what makes me crazy, because it's like, we spent 7 years going to law school, and it's not like we are constantly
You were in law
on
school for 7 years. It only took me 3.
school, college. Well, it should have taken 7. It did only take the 3, but it felt like
Bachelor's
7.
for 4, then
Yes,
3 for
and then
law
3 years of law
school, of
school.
course, yeah.
So, yeah, lawyers aren't obnoxious at all, Will Worsham.
No, not at all. Not in the slightest.
So it is difficult when people do misstate things, and it's like we're just pointing out, what.
But then to argue
is-
with someone, and this
Yeah.
person actually knew I was a lawyer and is not a lawyer. And their response to me was, well, that's what they taught me in driver's ed. And I'm like, well, they taught you wrong in driver's ed, because I know for a fact that's not the law.
And are you really remembering driver's ed correctly, however many years later?
At any rate.
But whatever.
And, I will agree, it's the polite thing to do.
It is. It is. You know what? I don't like it when people don't do the thank you wave when I let them in. Ticks me off. Ticks me off. I don't like that.
Give me a little, hey,
Yeah,
just a little something, thank
like
you.
a little thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of do it twice. I do it beforehand, and then once I'm in, I kind of do,
One of the things about that, though, that I actually would like to maybe warn our 3 listeners about is
Public service announcement.
Sometimes when you're going to make a left turn,
Sure.
like you're on Sunshine.
Oh, yeah.
And the people,
I know what you're
and
going to
they left
say.
you a space, and
Yeah.
they wave you on.
Yeah.
They're liable if there's an accident. If an oncoming car hits you as you like the other lane, and you go because they signaled you on, and you get hit, the person that waved you on and told you it was clear is liable for that accident. It's true. I know somebody it happened to, and actually they were the person that did the wave. They were a friend of mine, and they got sued, and I did the
Okay. Well, that's different that's not a laws violation.
No, not a criminal, but it's a civil liability. And,
Okay.
and this case actually dealt with a death. There was a death. They were sued for wrongful death because they waved the person on.
Oh
said it
my
was-
gosh.
indicating that it was clear.
Right.
Now, this person said, no, I was just waving. And I'm like, well, but when you tell somebody the way is clear, you're assuming that. They're allowed to rely on that. And if there's an accident, you're civilly liable for that accident. So I'll stop, I'll leave the space, but I will never signal someone to go.
No, not at all, because you don't know, somebody could be speeding down that way,
Yeah.
and so the driver, who crosses. I mean, of course, they have a failure to yield
Yes.
to the oncoming traffic or to the person in the lane. All right.
But they were relying on your signal, and
On
that
the
makes
wave.
you civilly responsible for some portion of the day. And yeah, they got tagged for it.
Wow.
For sure.
You know what? The law really is fascinating.
It is.
It's very interesting.
Sometimes.
So,
This one
Yeah.
was just somebody asked for a lawyer to make a CPA. Make an LLC for them.
a CPA to make an LLC.
No, just actually ask for an attorney. Like, hey, I need a lawyer. I'm
Okay.
asking for a reference for a lawyer on Facebook. To
Right.
find a lawyer to make an LLC for them. Of course, I do that, and so
Don't do an eye roll because they're asking on Facebook.
I didn't mean to do that. I guess
Okay.
maybe I did, but that's fine. I retract the eye roll. How about that?
Because I ask for all kinds of things on Facebook. Hey, I need
Sure.
an HVAC person.
And,
I
you know,
need this.
a
I need
referral
that.
is
A
great.
dentist.
I guess what my eye roll was back would be asking for legal advice on.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's
would be
that's
ridiculous.
yeah. Don't do that.
Which actually reminds me of another one I want to
Oh
talk
my
about.
gosh.
Yeah, there's another one that happened. But this person said, hey, I want a lawyer to make an LLC.
Okay.
Someone commented, a CPA can do it for a lot less.
Ooh.
Now, that
Hey,
that is a
Do you offer accounting services for people?
no,
do you say like, hey, I I could do your taxes
in fact,
for you.
I do a lot. I do estate planning. That's all I do now.
Right.
And people ask me for tax advice. People ask me for all that. I'm like, I'm not a tax person. You need to talk to your CPA. Yeah. Stay in your lane, right? So I just said, hey, a CPA that forms an LLC is committing a crime. It's practicing law without a license.
Yeah.
Why do I get back?
So true.
Wrong. Yeah, wrong. I'm like, well,
okay. Now it's on.
Now it's on. Yeah, it's like, I'm a judge. I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm right about this one.
Yeah.
No, continue to argue with me about how their CPA did it. I'm like, well, just because they didn't get caught doesn't mean that they didn't commit a crime, right?
My whole living revolves around people not doing what the law says.
Yeah, that's literally what we do. And I held back probably my most sarcastic comments, which is really good of me. I need a cookie or something because of that. But realistically, I've told people before, it's like, listen, I'm just telling you that it's a crime when CPAs commit LLCs. From a personal perspective, I love it. I love it when CPAs and non-lawyers create LLCs because I can charge thousands of dollars for fixing
So much more.
Charge so much more for fixing the problem than I would have charged to do it right in the first place.
Sure.
Yeah. So, CPAs, God bless you, keep on forming LLCs in violation of the law. You're just making the lawyers more money when it comes down the road. I actually know some people that their accountant formed their LLC for them. It was 4 partners. Partners got in a dispute. Of course, they're dependent on their operating agreement that was, quote unquote, drafted by a accountant. And it was a mess because it wasn't a real operating agreement. It didn't have all the things that an operating agreement needs. And a lot of accountants that form LLCs or other people that just form them for other people, they just file the form with the Secretary of State. Maybe they get the EIN number. They don't do the operating agreement.
Right.
If I'm going to sue you and you have an LLC and I want to get to you personally, my first request for production of documents, give me your operating agreement. You either don't have it, and you admit you don't have it, which means you're not operating as an LLC, you're operating as sole proprietorship.
So there the protection goes.
So your liability protection is gone. Or you commit fraud and you draft one really quick and backdate.
Backdate it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or you commit fraud, which then you made your problem even worse when we figure that out.
Yeah.
Which all we have to do with that is go to your bank and realize that you never filed one with your bank. Most banks won't let you open an account without an operating agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
So they're doing people a favor, which is where I actually got into a lot of the LLC work is I would have business lenders that would refer me people because people would show up with their articles and their EIN number and no operating agreement. And the bank would be like, we can't do this unless you have an operating agreement.
Right.
They'd refer them to me. I'd do their operating agreement. Boom. We're done.
Have we lost you yet, Rodney? Because,
we're geeking out over here.
But we're going to stop. We're going to stop.
There's something very interesting about traffic. But
And something else about LLCs, but not interesting.
She caught herself with her cursing words there.
Yes, she did.
I have noticed that before. So she does have a tendency to just kind of let it fly.
Yeah.
But
We're going to have to get you a microphone, Rodney.
I would throw in, it doesn't have anything to do with that topic, but my pet peeve
Yeah.
Rodney's pet
would
peeve.
be doing a funeral service and people do not give the right of way
Oh.
to the hearse.
People not yielding right away to the funeral procession on the way to, yeah.
And there's just a disrespect for that.
Yeah.
And
It'd be nice. People pull over,
Yeah.
get out of the way. It's a few minutes out of your
in
day.
smaller towns, you see that.
For sure.
Right.
In smaller towns, you do see that.
Everybody is in a hurry, or those that pull in the procession so they can keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting.
Just get middle of it. That's rude.
Yeah, and nobody's that important. There was a very moving moment. When I had a relative that passed away in Oklahoma, and it was a small town, and so there's a funeral procession through town, and everybody in that town stopped. Everybody on the sidewalk, mowing the yard, they stopped and they waited the whole time as that funeral procession went by. And I teared up. I was so moved by that gesture and that they didn't know us. And
Can we cue up Jason Aldean's Life in a Small Town here for Carol right now?
give me some tissues. Okay, you're arguing with somebody on Facebook. Did you want to get back with that or argue?
My last point. This came where somebody posted in one of these groups. I need a legal opinion. I need a lawyer to give me a legal opinion. And everybody's just kind of go like, well, then pay a lawyer, hire a lawyer. It's
Oh,
like,
nice.
I'm not paying for
Okay.
a 5-minute consultation. Like, okay. So
How-
you're going to go to the grocery store and not pay for the bag of chips. Or I mean, she was
Well,
kind of
and-
vehement that she deserved someone to answer her legal question,
For
a
free.
lawyer on the internet, on Facebook, for free. And I've told people before, listen, there is no such thing as a simple legal question. If it was a simple legal question,
You wouldn't
wouldn't
be
need a lawyer.
asking.
You wouldn't need a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so true. And so people don't understand that, like you said. So if somebody says, let me give you a scenario, and they give me a scenario, and it's like, so was I trespassing? Or could I be found guilty of trespassing? It's
Maybe.
like, it depends. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on a whole host of things. You know how I know that? Because I went to law school for 3 years, and then I was a prosecutor, and then I was a defense attorney, and then I learned all this stuff. So I'm talking to you for 5 minutes, but do you know how many hours have gone into that 5-minute answer?
Yeah, it's like the story, and it's got many different permutations to it. But one example is Henry Ford got a machine this engineer built that's making cars or making car parts or whatever, and one day it breaks down, and he can't fix it. He can't find, nobody in his shop can fix it. He can't figure out how to fix it. So he calls the engineer that built it, right?
Right,
He says,
sure.
"You fix it." So the engineer shows up, looks around for a few minutes, takes out a hammer, whack, 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 fixes it. It's like 10 minutes. And then he leaves, and he sends Henry Ford a bill for $1,000. And Henry Ford sends him back and says, what did you send me a bill for $1,000 for? It was 10 minutes. All you did was whack it with a hammer. It's like, I need an itemized bill. Said, okay, so he sends him back. Hitting the machine, $10. Knowing where to hit it, $999, $1,000. That's exactly what we do. It's like, I understand it looks like a piece of paper.
Right.
I understand it looks like a letter. You know what? Knowing what to put on the paper, that's what the value is.
Yeah.
And that's what we sell. That's what we do.
Absolutely.
So anyway,
Absolutely.
there you go. That's the fun part of the show.
Was it? Okay. All right. So, now we get to the boring part of the show.
No, this could be fun
wasn't the
too.
boring
But yeah, we promised, I guess, to talk about the Supreme Court. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so a couple things. One, so we mentioned a decision about Trump being kicked off the ballot in Colorado,
That being unanimous.
and
He thought that was unique.
we were like, "Wow!" Like it was a big deal. Like
Yeah.
both of us, kind of wide-eyed
Yeah.
and woo, how impressive is this? So, and then I think I even said on the air, maybe afterwards, I wonder how many decisions are unanimous. And so I was a little humbled.
You did the research.
I did the research. So there were 58 cases that the Supreme Court heard last year. 48%, nearly half,
Nearly half.
were unanimous. We're actually like, wow, huge thing.
Yeah,
And it's like happens
I
all
guess
the time.
the ones that get reported in the news are
Yeah.
never that way. So, I mean, I would be curious then to know what those 48% were.
That were
20,
unanimous.
What would be about 23 cases then?
Yeah.
What they were about, what the issue was, because you would almost think that if it comes up to the Supreme Court and they unanimously do whatever they're going to do, it probably shouldn't have got there anyway. It should have been maybe obvious, and it might have been one of those where we're just unifying the circuits,
Right.
Where you've got one circuit that's kind of got this weird rule that doesn't line up with the other circuits,
Right.
And so they take the case, they barely argue it, they may even take it on paper.
Right.
Does the Supreme Court take it on paper with no
Yes, sir.
oral argument? I know our courts will.
Yeah.
I can see
I
them
would.
doing that. Just
I
say,
would
"Eh,
assume.
here you go."
Yeah, I would assume so. Here, we're just going to let you know what our decision is.
Yeah.
Without, we
Submit
don't
your
need to hear
briefs.
you argue about it.
Submit your briefs.
Yeah.
We'll ask you if you want.
Yeah. So at the Court of Appeals, you have to ask.
You have to ask if you
for
want
an
a
argument.
oral argument.
And
Yeah.
so, and our Supreme Court, Missouri, hears oral arguments as well. So we kind of went into another boring part of it. So here's the
Too much lawyer.
Here's the political part of the show, though, and kind of what I think would be interesting to viewers. We make this huge deal about presidents choosing who's on the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
We get all fired up about it. We get arguments. We, dig up dirt on people. We have, the hearings, with Congress. I mean, it's a huge ordeal. And so does it
Don't
really
remember
matter?
A lot of dirt being dug up on Kagan or Ketanji Brown Jackson. I don't know. I don't recall any dirt being brought up in their confirmation hearings. Seems like only when it's the Republican nominees that people are slinging it. Am I wrong?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to research because I don't follow it that closely. And we don't prep our topics. So Will doesn't give me time to prepare to,
It's just all spontaneous.
I know. But it's interesting. And I think so. We talked about, abortion and Roe v. Wade and that kind of thing. And I was thinking, about the Supreme Court has done so many good things, and I think we kind of lose track of how important the law is and kind of the influence that the Supreme Court has, and so one thing that springs to mind that I think is huge or was huge was Brown versus the Board of Education. So do you want to tell our audience members
I'll let you
what,
know.
since I mentioned
You
it?
brought it up, yeah.
So as we know, there was segregation in education for years and years. And so, and the laws were, it's separate but equal, and so, and that was okay. You could separate people out from school and say, you have to go to this school based on your race, and you get to go to this school based on your race.
Now what we're going back to.
So,
Because
okay.
we want the no whites allowed campuses. This is a safe space for people of color only.
Where is that happening?
Oh, well, everywhere. Research it. It's out there. Yeah. Yeah, this is a safe space, no white people. Look it up.
Can you give me like a town or a school or a
let's try
state?
Berkeley, for
or
example. I'm
are you
guaranteed-
talking about colleges? Or
Yeah, I'm talking about colleges. I'm
Okay.
talking about colleges. Colleges that have created spaces where white people aren't allowed, like a student union. This is only for people of color. White students aren't allowed in this section.
Wow.
Yeah. See, you watch the mainstream media, you don't find out about that stuff because they're just giving you the rosy liberal view of everything. But you broaden your media intake, you find out about all these other things.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to research that.
Yeah.
So,
So
maybe,
continue.
so colleges, maybe Berkeley. We don't really know where, but
Can't tell you where.
Okay.
But I can look it up and find out.
Okay. Text me that.
Yeah,
Don't
well,
call me.
Don't call you. I won't
Text-
call you.
text
I'll send
me.
you a link to a video or a podcast. 'Cause
Of course you will. He does
Yeah.
that. He does that. Yeah. It's very entertaining. So,
No more segregation. That's what Brown said.
because it became obvious in practice,
Yeah.
it wasn't equal.
It wasn't equal, sure.
And it wasn't going to be done until someone stepped in. The Supreme Court stepped in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the Supreme Court has a very unique place of power, in the United States. And I think that they've wielded that power pretty well. So anyway, what are your thoughts about the
for the
Supreme
most part-
Court in general?
Most part, I think that's true. And I think particularly our Supreme Court has done a really good job of staying in their lane.
Yeah, they do.
To
Absolutely.
recycle our prior conversation. I think a lot of lower courts don't, which is where the Supreme Court then comes in and says, no, you can't. You're legislating, you're making policy. That's not your job because we have a separation of powers. And we have
Right.
a balance of power. We have checks and balances. That's the way the Constitution was written. We have the executive branch. We have the judicial branch. We have the legislative branch. And what I think is interesting about that is we're seeing our executive branch do a heck of a lot of legislating. And we're seeing our judicial branch do some legislating.
So when you say that you're seeing a lot of the executive branch do legislating, give us some examples. Like, what do you mean by that?
There's a couple of ways that happens. One is Congress allows it because they'll pass a law that creates, say, the EPA, and then gives the EPA rule-making authority.
Right.
So now the EPA gets to write all these rules. Well, that's legislation, which there's an argument to be made isn't the domain, the purview of an executive branch office like the EPA, that those rules should be at least passed by the Congress because they're making law. That's lawmaking when they make rules. The other place that we see it is just the executive orders. We just see executive orders,
Right.
and those are arguably legislative too.
Okay. But, in Missouri, we have the CSR, the Code of State Regulations. And I think kind of the theory behind it is, so we have a whole chapter of 311, which is alcohol, and it talks about the, sale, distribution, and manufacture of that. And then CSRs really kind of flesh it out and explain it, define it some more. And it's easier to change the CSRs, and it's a lot of interpreting the laws. Like, so we're going to give you some more guidelines.
And there's room for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, my specific example would be like you look at the ATF. I mean, they're just out of control. And the rules that they've made are ridiculous. For example,
Okay.
we're going to say you can't have a suppressor on your firearm, which, by the way, that's a whole other different issue, because you can have a suppressor, you can have a fully automatic weapon, you can have all this stuff. You just have to buy a tax stamp, and you have to get approved by the ATF to get all of that.
Is that hard to do?
It's not hard to do. It is time consuming. So, for example, I applied for a suppressor last March.
Okay.
My application for a tax stamp was denied in December.
Okay.
So I
7 months later. Or,
I called 9
months later.
I called a couple of the folks that I know, and I said the ATF has arbitrarily and capriciously denied my application.
Did they say why?
They said that the name of the trust was non-conforming, because I have an NFA gun trust that I
Okay.
bought the tax stamp in, and I can explain why you would want to do that some other time.
We've been boring enough for today.
Yeah, we've been boring enough for today.
We're gonna
see, you
say
know,
what the two that are left in our audience.
if you draft
today.
a trust, the last word in the name of the trust is trust.
Okay.
You know, it's like the will and shall be divorced from revocable trust.
Right.
So the name of but you can name it anything you want as long as it ends in trust.
Okay.
So the name of my gun trust was it's the ATF I don't trust. And they rejected it. So, I get a hold of my close personal friend, Eric Burleson.
So hold on. So just a minute. The people that you're asking for something from, and you're kind of giving them the bird.
but it's a shall issue. If I meet the requirements, they have to give it to me.
And then you're like, and guess what they did?
Yeah.
I'm in shock.
So, called a couple of folks, and
Yeah.
I said, hey, could you take a look at this? I'm happy to. So then I get, would you resubmit that? Sure. So but now I've resubmitted it in January. So now
Of this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm still waiting on it to be approved. So without my shenanigans, though, 9 months.
9 months
Right?
is a long time to.
9 months is a long time, considering the stuff that they're able to do a lot faster than that.
Mm-hmm.
There's other things that they're able to process a lot faster, particularly if it's something like, oh, you've got a bump stock. Oh, we're going to be right out for that. But second of all, why are we regulating suppressors more than anything else? They don't even have bullets in them. All they do is make a gun quieter. Quite frankly, they make the gun safer to shoot because it doesn't damage your hearing. It's a safety device, quite frankly. And all these, and people have the impression that you put a silencer on a gun, it goes pew, 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 like the movies. It doesn't. It's not that quiet. That's a movie thing.
Okay.
It makes the firearm bearable to fire without ear protection on. You can still hear it, easily hear it. The other thing that I think the ATF...
Hold on a second. Do you think the perception is that people are going, if people have suppressors, that they're going to be using their gun illegally, like to...
Sure. But
Okay. But that's not the reality.
that's not the reality. I mean, I guess somebody might, but only if they didn't really know. I mean, only a fool would think that they're going to use a suppressor so that nobody will hear them shoot the gun. Nobody that really knows guns would think that. That's not the way they work.
Okay.
The other thing that I think is absolutely ridiculous is I can have an AR-15 pistol,
Okay.
perfectly legal to have a pistol that shoots the exact same rounds as the AR-15, same size magazine, same everything. It just doesn't have a stock on it, right?
Right.
Shorter barrel because it's a pistol, no stock on it, perfectly legal. I don't need a tax stamp. I don't need anything for it. If I put a stock on it, which makes it easier to shoot, more accurate, less likely to hit an unintended target, now it's a short barrel rifle. And now it's subject to ATF regulation. Now I have to get a tax stamp. Why? I took something and I made it actually safer to use, but now they're making it harder to own. And all I'm saying is the people making these rules don't know anything about guns. They don't know anything about what makes them safe. I don't know why they're making these rules. I mean, I can speculate that they're just trying to make life difficult for people that own guns.
Where's the NRA? I mean, as the huge lobbyist and all the money and influence that they have, why are they not involved in the legislation lawmaking
Sure they are.
part?
They have the NRA ILA, Institute for Legislative Action. I think that goes to show you they're not as powerful as people think they are. because they haven't been able to get these laws changed because they're administrative rules. These are not statutes. These are the rules the ATF has internally created, and the director of the ATF interprets and then tells us what the rule is. So the most recent one was on the ban of what they call pistol braces. So you can get, for a pistol, it was legal to put a brace on it so that it was easier for you to handle. Like if you were a little disabled, had weak arms, something, you could get a pistol brace that you could put on your gun, and that was not considered a stock, so it didn't fall under that, didn't make it a short barrel rifle. Right?
Okay.
Well, but you could put it up against your shoulder, that brace, and so then the ATF changed years of practice and said, no, now we're calling that a short barrel rifle. And you've got millions of Americans that own these firearms that are now forced to register a gun that they didn't have to register before or face 5 years in prison because the ATF director just changed his mind. This is the same ATF director that refers to magazines as clips because he doesn't know the difference in the parts of the firearms. He doesn't know a firearm well enough to know the difference between a magazine and a clip. He's got no business being the director of the ATF.
Well, okay.
So you got your rant out of me there.
Yeah, boy, I did. That wasn't even intentional.
Those are examples of the executive branch legislating
Right.
instead of the legislator
Right.
legislating. Now, our CSRs in Missouri, I actually think are pretty good. I think they're really helpful because they're tied.
Code of State Regulations.
Yeah.
So do you want to explain what they
it's the same-
do?
Well, we have the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations,
Right.
out there too.
Right.
So the Code of State Regulations. So the Conservation Department, for example, is
Sure.
a good example. So you've got statutes in Missouri that say this is how we regulate conservation issues and establishes a conservation department, and it gives them rule-making authority. But all of their CSRs have to point back to a statute
Right.
that gives them the authority
Right.
to write the rule.
Right.
Right, and that's something we don't have in the federal government. It's like you can look at a CSR and go, okay, this CSR is interpreting that statute, and I think that's really well done and really helpful.
Okay.
So I'm happier with our CSRs than I am with our CFRs
All right.
because it's the feds; they do everything wrong.
Well, and so I know we kind of diverted from the Supreme Court. Maybe it wasn't that interesting a topic to begin with, but another topic that I was thinking of. I've been a little frustrated with bills passing and legislation.
Can we go back real quick to the Supreme Court? I want to ask you about one thing.
Oh yeah, go right ahead.
So recently we had the Supreme Court decision, Murphy versus Missouri. If you're familiar with that one,
I am not.
Maybe not. So this was a free speech case, went to the Supreme Court. It's argued, we don't have the decision yet.
All right.
But it was about, should social media companies be like Facebook, Twitter, and all that, are they going to get protection as a publisher, like the newspaper, where you can't sue the newspaper for somebody writing an opinion, right? When somebody posts something in the newspaper, they have some protections from that.
Okay.
But social media companies are saying, hey, we're just publishers. We're not responsible for the content. So if somebody posts something they shouldn't have posted, we can't be held liable for that. So you've got all this, teenage girls bullying each other on social media, and the girls committing suicide sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so the social media companies are saying we're not liable for that because we're mere publishers. But now but they're not mere publishers because they're saying you can say that, you can't say that. They're blocking certain speech, they're promoting other speech, they're suppressing speech.
They have rules of
conduct, and so there's congressional hearings and there's Supreme Court cases about should they have that protection as publishers or not. If they're going to be gatekeepers, they're not publishers, they're editors.
Right.
And they should not have that protection. If they're going to take it upon themselves to exercise that authority, then, with great authority comes great responsibility or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
something like that.
So this case went to the Supreme Court. It involved Missouri. And what made the headlines was actually a question or a statement by Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. I can't say her last name without saying her first name because it doesn't flow. And it made a lot of waves because she said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, counsel, I'm concerned that your interpretation of the First Amendment restricts the government's ability to regulate speech. To which everybody said, it's supposed to. That's the point of the First Amendment. Isn't it a little cringeworthy that a sitting Supreme Court justice could say something that obtuse?
Yeah. Yeah. It is, and people do that sometimes, and judges sometimes will ask you questions or say something, and you're just like what?
Not everybody can do a live TV show off the top of their head.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So, so there was for an example, there was a juvenile judge, not the one we have now. This is in previous years.
Names will be withheld to protect the guilty.
And so, these people had, used drugs, and their children had come into care, and then they were clean, and they had proven they were clean, and they were clean for months, and they had jobs, and it was amazing. And so we're like, okay, we want to give the kids back and close the case. And so this judge said, well, how do I know they won't use drugs again? And the entire room was like, oh, if that's the standard we use, then we don't give any kids back at all, because they may have a dirty house again. They may neglect the kid again.
And don't you just turn around and go, well, Judge, how do I know you won't use drugs? Because that's really the question, isn't it? I mean, any of us are subject to
I may go home and have a drink tonight after this day.
The future is unknown. It's rainy. I'm feeling good. So you're a Supreme Court justice. You're on the bench. You're in public. You're being recorded. I mean, and that
it is
to me that is such a fundamental concept that's exactly what the First Amendment does.
Yeah.
That to say you're concerned about it.
Yeah.
I mean, can we impeach for that? It seems like we should be able to impeach for that. I'm like, you need to go back to law school. There's a class that we missed if you're going to ask that question.
Yeah, and
now, here I am, a little municipal judge in Rogersville, Missouri, criticizing the Supreme Court justice, but I have a microphone and she doesn't.
It is, and it is easy. I mean, we've all had those things that we've said that
that was dumb.
We wish we could, that we wish we could take back, or it's like, oh, I flipped that. That's not how it sounded in my head.
I think the concerning thing though is does that or does it not reveal something about the thoughts of this person that's.
And that is the concern. So when they say that, it's like you kind of just stop, and I wonder if all of the air was sucked out of the room, when that was said, like it was in my juvenile court, in my juvenile courtroom.
You wonder what Clarence Thomas was doing. It's like, what? Girl?
Stop talking out loud. Let's take a break.
Now, you had a fun experience that you were regaling us.
Oh, the 48-minute conversation?
Yes.
Which one? Okay.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah. So, okay, so I have a client that has a warrant. We want to get the warrant recalled. All right. So there's a docket entry on a state case, and I apologize. I don't think we could be more boring. We may try to be more boring in the future, but today's show, if you made it this far, this is kind of a good story.
Fun legal stuff.
It is
maybe
banter. So this is more misuse of.
We need to get these non-lawyer guests on here. So help us. That's what we need to do.
Okay.
Fill our other chairs.
Our certificate of need. Gayla was really good.
Yes,
she was really interesting.
Well, and Scott was great too. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll work on that.
More.
So, stream of conscious conversation today. Yep. No, it's fine. You won't deter me. I'll pick right back up where I was.
That's why you're there.
Where I was. So, this girl is this woman is in jail, and there's a docket entry on a felony case that says, hey, I'm going to release you to go to PFH, Preferred Family Health, for inpatient substance abuse treatment. You can only be released to a representative of PFH. So PFH says, we're not picking you up. Like, we're not transporting you. Mm-hmm. And so then someone from the Department of Health, Mental Health, got involved. And so he calls me today. He's like, hey, can you get rid of this warrant for this defendant who's incarcerated, because I need to pick her up and take her to PFH. And I said, well, yeah, I can't do it right this minute. And he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, what's going on? So driving down from Kansas City to take her 6.1 miles from the jail that the sheriff insisted on building out there in BFE, and
by the airport.
By the airport, yeah.
Quite the structure.
So, oh my God. So anyway, so I spent 3 phone calls and 48 minutes on 1 phone call with the sheriff's office saying, hey, you have these vouchers that you use. Like, so when my clients are released, they have these cab vouchers. And so because they're out, 6 miles out of town. And so they give them a ride with a cab and they say, we're going to drop you off at like Rapid Housing. So they used to have a few different places they drop them off, but now it's just one place. So I said, hey, can we just, use the voucher, have a cab, take her to PFH. So so, hey, I don't know who would answer that question. Well, maybe somebody at the jail. I don't know. Crazy. So then the jail receptionist, who has no idea who that would be.
Well, she's new.
And it puts me on.
I mean, I'm sure she's new because
of the turnover. So then there was the next person who said, I don't know why you're talking to me. And I said, because I was transferred. So I explained the situation again. She's like, I've got the person for you. And I said, that sounds great. So then I was on to the next person. And I said, do you need me to explain it again? Or she probably explained it to you. And he's like, no, I have no idea who you are, what you're calling for. And I explained, he's like, I'm just the release person. Like, I can't do anything. So then I got to another person. And so anyway, so then I was hot, as you can imagine. I was really hot. And so, and I was barely containing it, but I was, and I apologized. And I said, listen, I know you're getting like the wealth of my,
built up frustration.
Yes. And I'm really sorry about that. So anyway, but in talking to her, she's like, well, pretrial services transports people. And I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
I'll just get a court order. And she's like, well, or as a backup, the Ron Harris, the DMH guy, could come down and pick her up. I'm like, from Kansas City? Now she got me all riled up again. So anyway, I think we've got the problem figured out. Okay. But it's just infuriating. I mean, the fact that 48 minutes and a lot of patients and a lot of explaining the same problem, and the fact that we don't know where to send you. We don't know who to talk to. You're talking to 4 people before you get to a sergeant who's not there. And then the captain isn't there. And then you have to leave a message, and I just said, let me just say what's going to happen if we don't figure this out. Because if we don't figure this out, I'm going to go on a rant. And this will be like a walk in the park compared to the rant that everyone will endure.
I will say, I've always found Sheriff Arnott to be personally helpful whenever I've encountered him. I've always found him to be helpful. I was the judge in a couple of towns in Greene County, and every time I talked to him, he was great. Never had any problem with him. Didn't always get the answer I wanted, but Roy Cole in Webster County is a gem. We love him. He's great. I
asked them if they had. I went out there one day, so you'd have to drive clear out there, So I went out to drop off a subpoena, and it was raining, cats and dogs, and you have to park way, way, way out. So I inquired by email. I'm like, hey, do you have visitor parking? And so one of those captains said, yeah, we do. I don't know where it is, but I said, well, maybe you could put up some signs. Yeah. Because I couldn't find them. And they weren't anywhere close to the building. And so Sheriff Arnott got into the conversation. He's like, no. What public building has visitor parking? That's ridiculous. And so
a jail that has visitors, maybe.
I know. And then there was some, and then I said, the other thing, maybe you could put on your website, or maybe you could like train the people that are answering the phone that we can drop subpoenas off in town at the courthouse. Because the sheriff's deputies come in twice a day, every day, and they pick up subpoenas.
Andy.
Yeah. I didn't know that. When I called out there, they said, yeah, you need to bring them out here. And so I said, maybe that's just an education thing. Sure. To which he didn't like that comment that I made. And I said, or maybe you could put it on the website. He said, so you don't like the parking, you don't like the website, you don't like driving out here. Maybe somebody else should serve your subpoenas for you. Oh, yeah. I mean, all that's documented. I kept all of those.
You had a less than pleasant experience, it sounds like.
And his poor captain was like, can I just take your phone away from you so you'll stop emailing this woman? She just asked us about visitor parking. Now you've got her all riled up.
So this was all email?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's all saved in a little computer file.
For future reference, I'm sure.
It's not a big deal, but it shouldn't be so time consuming to move somebody 6.1 miles. Yeah. Yeah,
sometimes you just need people, and it's hard. And I have mixed emotions about folks that work in those jobs because I mean, they're not great everybody's mad at you. I get that. You know, sometimes it's just like, can we work towards a solution rather than all the reasons why we can't? Can we look for the can instead of the can't?
Yeah.
In this scenario,
I want to move one person 6.1 miles.
How can we get this done?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I feel like I try to work from that perspective. How do we make progress?
And I was so
sometimes you
calm.
can't.
I was calm until I was 45 minutes. The last 3 minutes I was not calm.
Well,
but the first 45 I was.
And you're a private citizen in a private business, and you're highly motivated to get things done.
Yeah.
People that work, and I'm going to say something I don't mean, but when you work, when your job is not profit driven, it's sometimes there's not the incentive there to get things done. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
You know, when you don't have a motive to do things, when basically you put in your time and you get paid, regardless of how well the organization performs, there's sometimes not an incentive to do the things that you would do if you were profit motivated.
That's true.
Which is why socialism is always a bad idea. We'll talk about that.
Wait. No, so I have to tell you. So I'm driving out here. And I've had this crazy day because I also went to see you today and talked to some people about the Lake Springfield plan that I talked about last week. And so I'm on the way out here, and so I get a call from an 864 number, which is normally the city of Springfield.
Oh, yeah.
And so this police officer was like, "Hey, do you have a minute?" I'm like, "Absolutely." Calls me up to talk about a client I have now, a former client. He's really worried about him. He wants to be really proactive, you know, and do some things to help him out. And so I kind of brainstormed with him some things that we might be able to do.
Cool.
So, you know, so I have like the opposite, you know, two law enforcement agencies within the same municipality, and I have a completely opposite experience. One is like, oh my gosh, you're going out of your way. You looked at my number. You found out I represented him. You're trying really, really hard, you know?
And you'll see them in the same department, too.
Yeah.
You know?
And then I just got this cluster, you know, from the sheriff's department, and I'm just like, to me, it's the same thing with the, you know, visitors parking, you know, and the subpoenas and things like that. It's a training issue. You are not training your staff.
Well, it's always fun to find people that do the right thing, you know?
Yeah.
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 We're sitting right here.
Yeah, right. Did we talk about, I don't want to go into, but I just can't remember. Did we talk about the trial I did with the DWI case where I had a trooper just tell the truth?
Oh yeah, we talked about that after we
talked about that after. Well, we may
the
tell
air.
a story about that sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Next week, I think we'll talk about J6 and Antifa.
Okay. Yeah.
You did a little research.
I did a little research.
I'm gonna have to do a little research. We'll look into that. We'll talk about that, and then
April 8th. So April 1st is next week, and then April 8th.
April 8th,
and then April 15th.
Yeah, April 15th.
What's happening April 15th? Will?
April 15th. We have a guest coming in by video. Stephen Hayes, the president of Americans for Fair Taxation, is going to be on the show with us live to talk about the fair tax.
Rodney's still awake.
Rodney's still awake.
And everybody else is probably tuned out.
Coincidentally, on April 15th, we'll be talking about fair tax. But yeah, next week we'll delve into the J6 and the
Antifa
and how they were treated, maybe the same, maybe differently.
I think that'll be a fun show. I mean,
I
think it'll be much more interesting than maybe
Then listen
today.
to us rant about random legal things nobody cares about but us. All right. Well, we'll do
Thanks,
that.
guys.
Thanks for watching. We'll
Have
see you
a great
next
week.
Bye.